Childhood Disrupted: How Your Biography Becomes Your Biology and How You Can Heal by Donna Nakazawa. A book recommendation and some important points. The hardships we experience in childhood can have a lasting impact on our biology and on our adult lives. The Adverse Childhood Experiences study has shown how adverse experiences in childhood can shape our adulthood and health years later. These traumas include being verbally put down and humiliated, being emotionally or physically neglected, being physically or sexually abused, living with a depressed parent, a parent with a mental illness or a parent who is addicted to alcohol or other substances, witnessing one's mother being abused, and losing a parent to separation or divorce. The ACE study measured 10 types of adversity, but new research tells us that other types of childhood trauma, such as losing a parent to death, witnessing a sibling being abused, violence in one's community, growing up in poverty, witnessing a father being abused by a mother, being bullied by a classmate or teacher, also have a long-term impact. The scientific data supporting the link between childhood adversity and mental, emotional, social, and physical health problems in adulthood is enormous and continuously growing. Some explanations are offered in this book. A healthy stress response is supposed to react quickly to potential threats. The fight or flight response triggers. The hypothalamus stimulates the pituitary and the adrenal glands. Adrenaline and cortisol tell the immune cells that it's time to take action. Then, once the threat has passed, the HPA stress axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands, calm down. The sympathetic nervous system reacts to stress like a gas pedal, revving up the body, and then the parasympathetic nervous system acts like a brake. When you have a healthy stress response, your body returns to a baseline state of rest and recovery. However, when someone is repeatedly facing a lot of chronic stress, the stress response stays on. When the stress response is constantly activated, damage to the body can begin to occur. For example, if your immune system has to fight an infection, white blood cells secrete inflammatory cytokines to destroy the pathogens and repair tissue. But when there are too many cytokines, they can cause harm to tissue rather than do good. When an unhealthy stress response does not go full circle and is unable to relax, it continues pumping out a low dose of inflammatory chemicals. The HPA axis keeps mildly secreting stress hormones, which leads to chronic cytokine activity and inflammation. In simplest terms, chronic stress leads to dysregulation of our stress hormones, which leads to unregulated inflammation, and inflammation translates into symptoms and disease. Unfortunately, the toxicity of this process is worse in children. When the HPA stress axis is developing, when a child's brain is forced into a state of fight or flight excessively, less than optimal epigenetic shifts can occur. DNA may be blemished with methylation marks, inhibiting genes from being expressed as properly as they otherwise should have been. These methyl groups can damage genes that help to regulate our stress response later in life. When the brain can't regulate stress hormones, it goes into a state of constant hyperarousal and reactivity. People who have suffered from childhood adversity have been continuously shown to have a harder time managing stress in adulthood, as their biology is often damaged in ways that prevents them from being able to calm its heightened stress response. When years and years are spent in the first half of the stress cycle, the body wallows in inflammatory chemicals and is at a heightened risk of developing countless health problems. Studies have even shown direct correlations between specific traumas and specific physical health conditions. Interestingly, recurrent humiliation by a parent can be as detrimental as what are commonly considered to be more serious traumas, such as physical abuse. Scientists have discovered that it's not always about what's causing the stress as much as it is about the unpredictability of it. To use the author's analogy, rather than meeting a bear in the woods, it's like a bear is circling your home, and you never know when it might attack next. The bear can represent something as mild as your parents' cruel and inventive insults towards you, but the fear of not knowing when he or she is going to lash out again can really be what causes the most damage to your physical body, as it is constantly preparing to meet the threat. Also, when a child faces toxic stress, the growth of their hippocampus is inhibited. The hippocampus plays a large role in being able to successfully process and manage emotions and stress. Similarly, the prefrontal cortex, which is largely involved in decision-making, the amygdala, which processes fear, and other parts of the brain may have a smaller volume due to the biological responses to chronic childhood trauma and stress. Neuroinflammation can also occur in the brain when microglial cells are sent into dysregulation. Microglial cells are always scanning for danger, and they prune neurons in the brain that are no longer necessary. However, when microglial cells are exposed to chronic unpredictable stress, they can prune away too many brain cells, such as ones needed for reasoning and impulse control. The excessive pruning can lead to a variety of disorders mentally and emotionally. It can worsen for the child of a toxic environment when he or she reaches adolescence, because that is when the brain naturally begins to prune neurons for efficiency even more. If stress has already caused a loss of a lot of important brain cells, then this coming of age period can leave the adolescent particularly vulnerable. When adolescent pruning occurs in the integrated circuitry between the hippocampus, which is important in storing memories, the corpus callosum, which links the left and right hemispheres of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex, these brain changes have a profound effect on our decision-making abilities, self-regulatory processes, attention, emotional regulation, thoughts, and behavior. Dan Siegel, child neuropsychiatrist. Toxic stressors don't toughen up a child, they break down a child's or adolescent's brain so that the child is less able throughout life to handle the next thing and the next. The difference between character building experiences and toxic stress is really pretty clear. The author, Donna Nakazawa. Secrets are also particularly damaging in families because when something is wrong but nobody is talking about it, the child will assume that it is them that is the problem. Having just one reliable adult that reassures and validates the child can make all the difference.